that there were 3 ETs that came out of the craft, and 2 of them came over to this particular whistleblower, touched him, and a whole series of events transpired. Then when he realized that we humans were the problem, that we were targeting these objects, and that these people, these ET people, were completely non-hostile, very brilliant, communicated through thought forms and impressions and like packets of information as we speak about, he wanted to withdraw from the operation because he was horrified at what we were doing. He was threatened with death. Luckily, he had a family member senior enough in the organization to shelter him and get him out, and extracted him with 10 Marines, etc. But he was harassed. He was shot at, deliberately missed, obviously, just as a way of saying, keep your mouth shut. Now, 2 years later, he's back in his home state in the upper Midwest, and he is broad daylight, 1:42 in the afternoon. A man-made alien reproduction vehicle, roughly triangular in shape, comes over his car stalls, and then outside the car are these 3, quote, aliens. Now, these are the ones that everyone think of as aliens, not the actual ETs, and people go, what are you talking about? The vast predominant experience people have been stagecraft by deeply black covert operations targeting humans, both who have had actual contact or people in government for their psychological compliance with the false narrative of there being an alien threat. And that happened to this man, to the point that we have very clear drawings now of these PLFs, and also because he actually knocked one down and kicked it, the outer covering, it looks like skin, came off, and you can see the internal wires and tubes and what have you. So all of this we're going to go through on Saturday, and with the drawings and very specifically. Now, the reason that's so important is that this is not an uncommon occurrence. And of course, in Hollywood and movies and TV shows and UFO conferences, these are all presented as menacing aliens from outer space. And of course, I found out in 92, 93, 94 that in fact, we had highly classified projects that were manufacturing the fake aliens, and that phenomenon was launched not just in the United States, but all over the world, to cover up the presence. It created a sort of distraction, misdirect of the actual ETs. Now, this is really important for the people in the CE5 contact community to understand, because there's an endless number of people dealing with these conspiracy concepts of, the good aliens and the bad aliens working with the secret government, and this narrative and that narrative. And there have been people in bases seeing these little guys running around in military bases. But of course, the people observing that, those military people, didn't know that those were not indigenous, let's say from another planet, but were basically very advanced robotics that look lifelike. But I mean, really advanced and nanomolecular, very sophisticated. We're not talking, a robot at GM putting a bolt on a car. Very, very convincingly looking like a living extraterrestrial. Now, this has been really hard for me to say these things to the public, because it's not popular. People have their belief systems based on their fear, and then from that, hatred. But it's very important that this is now coming out in some very good, excruciating detail. And of course, this account, and we have this whistleblower, military whistleblowers, credentials, information, etc. That's being provided to the proper U.S. government authorities, down to the level of specifics, operational details, etc. Why? Because that's the only way these folks are going to get into the system, is getting them that kind of actionable intelligence, as we call it. And that is really important. And I'm going to make an appeal right here, right now, here in Washington, for there to be a small army of these type of courageous whistleblowers to come forward, men and women who've been on these projects. And by the way, on that retrieval team, there was a Delta group involved, and there were also just the people who were there just technically to get stuff and pick up debris. But there were women as well as men in that operation. And this was not that long ago. So we know that there are men and women still in those projects and who have been in them recently. We have extended protection to this man, which we are able to do. And we are also working on some other strategies, but those I can't speak about right now. I will say that there's now a conduit, a mechanism for these sort of people to cooperate officially with people in the United States government that has never existed. Now, the reason I say that is that in prior attempts, let's say Project Blue Book in the 60s, that was a sort of a storefront set up as a PR exercise. It was never intended to get to the truth and then inform the Congress, the president, or the American people. It was basically, again, a misdirect. The $22 million sent over to Bigelow Aerospace that Senator Harry Reid and that General Herbert gave us the detailed information on, that was set up as a way of absorbing that money and interest that was authorized by people in Congress and from the Pentagon. And that then was all trash. It resulted in nothing except, as the general said, a 40,000-foot snapshot, because he was an Army pilot originally. And there have been others. And over the last few years, of course, it's all been in the news, the New York Times, 60 Minutes, about various investigatory efforts. Now, what changed in the last couple of months? It's huge. It's big. The people who have been trying to get to the bottom of this on the various agencies and places have now realized that there's no getting into it through the front door. What do I mean? If you try to get to this through the chain of command, it doesn't matter if you're the president, doesn't matter if you're the CIA director, doesn't matter if you're a senator, doesn't matter if you're a 3 or 4-star general, unless you have been read into these projects and you've been read into them because you're willing to go along with a criminal enterprise, an unconstitutional, unlawful, murderous, kidnapping cell, you're not going to be told anything, nothing. So by definition, and of course we came to this assessment by 1993 and 94, that if you know about it, you are, perforce, someone who's been turned and is part of this corruption. And everyone else, doesn't matter what your rank is, doesn't matter what your position is. I mean, this is the case when I have met with ministers of defense in Canada, United Kingdom, Australia. Doesn't matter what your rank is. I mean, your position in the traditional government. You're not going to be shown anything or told anything. You go out to the Lockheed Skunk Works, you'll be shown a bunch of antique planes, a bunch of old stuff that run on fossil fuels. I know this for a fact. This is what they told me. Now, what does that mean? It means that now they sort of have come to a traumatic, and it is traumatic. I sometimes break up talking about the trauma of 1993, 94, finding out that in fact this was all true. It was not some wild conspiracy theory, although it's pilloried as that. Of course, I tell people, you ever heard of the mafia? There are criminal conspiracies. That's why there are all the conspiracy laws. But the way you defame something is called a conspiracy theory. These are facts. Everything I'm sharing with you are absolute, in court, provable facts. Now, what that means is, since the sort of curtain has been pulled away, this sort of titanium ceiling they couldn't get through, what we're doing now is putting together the most dispositive proof, evidence, and actionable details for everyone who is let's call them the white hats in the government who are really trying to solve this problem and fix this problem. We need the help of the public. And I'm making an appeal now, and I will go into more detail this weekend at the conference of why we need it, and how it needs to be conveyed. So our website, SiriusDisclosure.com, SIRIUS disclosure, all one word.com, there is a contact bar, and under that are witnesses. If you are a direct firsthand or someone secondhand but have documentation of, say, your father or somebody who've been involved excuse me, in these unacknowledged special access projects, please contact us. You know, we keep things very confidential unless the person wants to be known publicly. And of course, anyone at that level, you know, they sign non-disclosure agreements, sometimes out 70 years. They say they'll give up their pensions, and one recently that we dealt with that literally signed something saying that they could be terminated, killed, if they spoke of it. Now, that's not happening to any of these guys. We have a system in place to protect them. And I won't go into that any further, except that I extend what we have had under our protection and what's kept our team going to anyone who reaches out and anyone who helps to get this fascist covert group under control before we end up in a real debacle on this planet. Now, that is something that everyone can network, because it's 6 degrees of separation, as the old saying goes. There are people, every person knows somebody who knows somebody who may know somebody who, in fact, dealt with this issue. That may have been peripherally, it may have been for a short amount of time, or it may have been for a very prolonged amount of time, who are now ready to come out of the cold and come out of those shadows. And now more than ever, we have a mechanism to do that, because that did not exist in the 90s with the Clinton administration, because the president got intimidated and stood down that inquiry. It did not happen after him with Bush and Cheney. And of course, Cheney's been a key member of this committee running this, and he pretty much just sort of ran the intelligence shop for the Bush White House. And of course, Obama was given some information on this, but did not want to pursue it for a number of reasons. Usually it has to do with the fact that they can't get any straight answers, and they are intimidated and ordered what to do. In fact, we have a clip of Obama admitting as much, even though he was the president of the United States and the chief executive, who's supposed to have access to everything as commander-in-chief, but in reality, they do not. That's what Jimmy Carter also has told us, President Carter, in the past. So the only way around this sort of blockade is through the back door. People coming out through the back door into our system and then into the arms of the people trying to fix this problem. It takes courage. It takes diligence. It's an enormous undertaking, and it needs to be global, by the way. This is not just pertaining to the United States. You know, these operations are worldwide. I'll remind you, in our documentary that came out on July 4th of last year, that we discovered that Jacques Vallée had a top secret CIA document that specifically describes CIA abduction programs in Brazil and Argentina, where they would abduct civilians and make it look like it was alien abductions for its, and I quote, psychological warfare purpose. And that's word for word what's in a 1953 document describing the psychological warfare value of how they could use the UFO subject to enrich the war machine and eventually do what Werner von Braun, who invented the rocket for Adolf Hitler, warned about on his deathbed, to hoax an alien threat. So all of these operations are extremely well organized, well funded. Remember that the federal budget, United States, $5 trillion or plus or minus, most of those are entitlements. The rest is the Pentagon. And there's a little bit that's discretionary, not that much. The discretionary budget that the United States government in its totality has is dwarfed by an orders of magnitude by the resources of this group. The technologies that the US government has, as Admiral Wilson said to us, the best thing I know about is a B-2 stealth bomber, And I have learned that there are aircraft under the control of this clandestine group that can do circles around my B-2 stealth bombers. And this is head of intelligence for the Joint Chiefs of Staff. This is to me personally, when I had Edgar Mitchell at the meeting with me at the Pentagon. So I think people need to understand that there is a great opportunity that's opened, a door has opened, and we all need to walk through it together. And the more that do it, the stronger that move will be. So that's my appeal. Now on Saturday, the 9th of April, I'll be going through this and go through all the images of the actual ETs, the actual ET crap, the man-made crap, and the man-made aliens that are on the cover of almost every UFO book and and movie and documentary and film in Hollywood. All right. And this is, the penetration of this disinformation, this sort of a hoaxed alien presence has been thorough in all walks of life. And unfortunately, I said this when I was in New York meeting with a bunch of people who supposed are the New York 100, sort of the really elite in New York City, at a salon in a woman's home. And the wife of the Secretary General was there and some other people. And this woman said, I've read 26 books about alien abductions. And I said, yes, ma'am. You have just absorbed into your consciousness 26 times more rubbish than someone who's only read one book. Because those, not that necessarily everyone writing those books are part of some conspiracy, they're not. They're just parroting what the, observable experiences are without knowing who's causing the experience. And most people have never asked the question, Pat, and this is what's really concerning. Is it ours, man-made, or is it something extraterrestrial? Most people don't even know to ask that question. Well, every single case that happens, you have to ask that question because the technologies are extraordinary that they have to, as the word has been used in a document, we have stagecraft, these false interactions and abductions and mutilations with aliens. Now, to what purpose? It's obvious. It's psychological warfare. It's conditioning the public, the media, through movies, what have you, to assess that one or more of these extraterrestrial civilizations are hostile and a threat. And that's simply not true, but it sells well because people like cowboys and Indians fight and they love conflict. And humans generally tend to be very addicted to conflict, hate. And this is why we have endless racism, endless ethnic war, endless battles. And this is, the original sin of humanity, is not being able to see the oneness of all of us in all life. And then every time there's a difference, then we take up arms. The difference is, if you had a club and hit someone in the head, not great. Now we have thermonuclear weapons, and the secret government have weapons 1,000 times more deadly than a thermonuclear weapon that they have weaponized by studying extraterrestrial technologies. So this is an existential threat to the Earth, is what we're talking about. And we have to avert it. And we can. There's time. It ain't over till the fat lady sings. And so we can do it, but we're going to need everyone to help us. This is a daunting undertaking. And I can tell you the people that I meet with routinely and have over the years, they're traumatized by this, who are in senior government positions, because it's a type, I sort of think of it as disclosure PTSD. For most people at home listening, this is all very entertaining. But if you're in charge, like General Hughes, who was head of the Defense Intelligence Agency, just like the intelligence entity for the military, like the CIA is civilian, and you're being shoved aside and don't know any of this, and you're flying blind through a fog about ready to hit a mountain. It's terrifying. And so we have to create the roadmap. And this is the other thing. We need people who have actionable information and intelligence on project code names, locations, corporations, bases, facilities on a base, the underground layouts of these bases, on and on and on. So that's what we really need. And I'm hoping that we can, get enough information quickly over the next few months so that there can be a substantial breakthrough, and so the worst of the plans of this secret government operation dealing with UFOs can be averted. So that's what we're doing. But I wanted to let everyone know that that's what we'll be going into some depth on Saturday. Just wanted to do a quick update for people, so we'll have a schedule change. But I'm hoping that we'll have, a lot of folks come forward by releasing this whistleblower's information. It's so rich and it's so special because it covers not only the man-made ones in detail. I mean, we're talking right there, retrieving it, every detail, but also the ET craft, the ET beings, and the man-made aliens. And so that case, where it's a series of events that happened from someone who was on a specific retrieval team, and not, like Clifford Stone, God bless him, he passed away last year. He was on one in the 60s, but this is in the 2000s. This is fairly recent. So it's a huge breakthrough, and I hope people will join us on Saturday and network with everyone about this message to bring more people forward to tell the truth and have the courage to do this for our country and for humanity and the world.
Now, is this something that you afterwards are going to have for people who may not be able to attend or may not be there? Is this going to be somewhere where people can see this afterwards or hear about it?
Yeah, so the whole webinar, you can click on, if you can't see it live, it will be available immediately after it's live so that you can see it at your leisure. Because we realize that if you're in Australia, it may be 2 a.m. or whatever it is, or something crazy, or in Europe, at 10 o'clock at night in Pacific time, you're already, 8 hours difference in Paris. So it's wee hours of the morning. So we're going to, anyone who signs up for that will have access for, I think, a month or so to be able to see it the entire weekend, Friday night, Saturday, and then Sunday out under the stars. And that's the last thing I want to mention. People should get the CE5 Contact app and then join and practice it and join us out when we're out under the stars on Sunday night. But we're also going to do it inside on Friday and Saturday night, the 8th and 9th. But on the 10th of April, we're all going to have a few hundred people out in the desert on Native American land that they've let us use. And we're going to do the whole CE5 process for at least 4 hours out under the stars. And I think that is very powerful because it creates protection and higher consciousness. It shifts the world's way of thinking away from war towards universal peace and higher consciousness. And ultimately, that is the most powerful force. And if you combine right action and courageous action with higher consciousness and spirit, what the Shambhala kingdom, I think they used to call it, a Shambhala warrior, not violent at all, but in consciousness and spirit. I think that's what we all need to aspire to. And I think that's what we're all going to be doing together out in the desert. And I hope folks can join us.
If you enjoyed this video, make sure to check out the next one right here on the Best of Dr. Stephen Greer.